The screen fades in from black. A slow, thunderous drumbeat begins, echoing like footsteps of giants in the distance. The narrator's voice cuts through the silence, deliberate and commanding. The world was not prepared for this moment. A clash of voices, a duel of power, a war of words that sent shockwaves from Jerusalem to Ouagadougou. It was David versus Goliath reborn, except this time, David carried the spirit of Africa. Pause. The camera lingers on Benjamin Netanyahu at a podium, his tone sharp, his warning fierce. He points a finger not just at one man, but at an entire continent daring to rise. He speaks of final warnings, of red lines, of consequences too grave to ignore. His words drip with the confidence of decades, the confidence of a man who believes his nation stands above reproach, backed by history, by alliances, by power. But then, the frame shifts. A young leader steps forward, draped not in centuries of political tradition, but in the raw fire of sovereignty reclaimed. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, only in his 30s, yet carrying himself with the weight of generations. His eyes tell a story that needs no script, a story of defiance, of pride, of a refusal to bow. The air thickens. The clash is not just about Burkina Faso and Israel. It is about the meaning of sovereignty in an age where small nations are expected to kneel. It is about the return of African pride, the refusal to be lectured, the audacity to stand in the global arena and say, enough. Cinematic cut. Images flash, the Sahel burning with conflict, soldiers marching through dusty roads, youth chanting in the streets with flags held high. Their voices echo, Africa must rise. Africa must stand. Africa must not bow. This is not politics as usual. This is a battle of narratives. On one side, a veteran statesman wielding threats like a seasoned warrior. On the other, a young revolutionary refusing to be silenced. The power clash is not just military, not just diplomatic, it is spiritual, it is generational. It is global. The narrator leans in, voice low but steady. Netanyahu believed his warning would humiliate, that it would intimidate, but instead it unleashed something he did not expect. A shocking response that turned heads across the world. The screen slows, framing Traoré as he speaks, his voice raw and unpolished, yet sharper than any polished diplomat. He does not tremble. He does not yield. He invokes the language of dignity, of sovereignty, of Africa's right to chart its destiny without permission, and suddenly the David versus Goliath frame comes alive. Because here is the twist. Goliath no longer towers unchallenged. His voice echoes, but his shadow is not as long as it once was. For David, this African David does not stand alone. Behind him are millions, both on the continent and across the diaspora, watching, waiting, whispering, yes, speak. Speak for us all. The video cuts to history images of Kwame Nkrumah declaring independence, of Thomas Sankara riding his motorbike through the streets, of Patrice Lumumba addressing the nation with fire in his eyes. Their ghosts linger in the frame, reminding us that Africa's story has always been written in resistance, that warnings from the powerful have always been answered, not with silence but with defiance. The voiceover grows louder, more insistent. Netanyahu's final warning was not just a threat to Traoré. It was a test to Africa itself. Would the continent bow once more? Would its leaders retreat in the face of Western-backed pressure, or would they seize the moment to declare with unflinching clarity that Africa's time has come? The imagery sharpens vast landscapes of the Sahara, gold mines glinting under the sun, bustling African cities alive with youth and energy. The narrator contrasts it with footage of Western parliaments, old men in suits, trading words behind closed doors, their faces weary with the weight of old power. And then, back to the young captain speaking with words that cut like blades. His tone is not one of diplomacy, but of revolution. He calls out hypocrisy. He calls out arrogance. He calls out the idea that small nations should simply obey. The music swells. The narrator punctuates. This was not just a response. This was humiliation turned inside out. What was meant to frighten ended up inspiring. What was meant to break ended up building. The warning became a stage, and on that stage, Africa announced itself bold and unafraid. The scene transitions to reactions worldwide. Western commentators frown. Some scoff, others whisper of recklessness. African voices cheer, chant, celebrate online. The diaspora in Paris, London, New York, they share the clips. They flood social media with fire emojis and hashtags. Because this is bigger than Burkina Faso. This is bigger than Netanyahu. This is about the tectonic shift in global politics, where the so-called small nations are no longer so small, where sovereignty is not a gift handed down, but a right seized back. The narrator slows, the drums soften, but the tension remains. For decades, Africa was treated as a battlefield of foreign interests, its leaders puppets, its resources plundered. But now, with leaders like Traore, the narrative is changing. The humiliation of the past is transforming into the pride of the present. The continent is declaring, loudly, unshakably, that it will no longer accept warnings as chains. Cinematic fade to black. Then silence. From the silence, the narrator whispers, David did not tremble before Goliath. And today, Africa does not tremble before threats. The question is not whether Africa is ready. The question is whether the world is ready for Africa. The beat returns stronger now, like the pounding of thousands of feet in unison. The scene cuts back to Netanyahu, stern, unwavering. Then Traore, fiery, defiant. The narrator's voice crescendos. This was supposed to be a warning. Instead, it became a prophecy. A prophecy that the global order is shifting, that Africa is rising, that sovereignty is no longer negotiable. Pause. The screen holds on Traore's face, unflinching, proud. The narrator concludes the first act. This was not just a clash of leaders. This was a clash of eras. The old world warns, the new world answers, and in that answer lies the future. The music fades into an echo. The screen fades to black. The screen flickers back to life. We are no longer in the halls of government, nor in the dusty streets of Ouagadougou. We are somewhere larger, somewhere timeless, the battlefield of ideas. The narrator's voice returns, deeper, more resonant. The clash between Netanyahu and Traore was not confined to speeches. It echoed into every corner of the globe, exposing a deeper truth: the world is divided between those who cling to the old order and those who dare to shape the new one. Images roll across the screen. The United Nations Assembly, leaders debating in carefully measured tones. Outside, African youth rally with drums and banners, chanting that sovereignty is not negotiable. A young woman in Dakar raises her fist and shouts, "We are not colonies anymore." Her voice cuts sharper than any diplomat's speech. The contrast is unavoidable. Netanyahu speaks of lines in the sand, of punishments for those who cross them. His words are forged from decades of geopolitical dominance, sharpened by alliances with Washington and Brussels. But Traore's reply is forged in something older, in centuries of resistance, in the blood of ancestors who fought against empire, in the whispers of warriors who refused to kneel. His voice trembles not with fear but with urgency. The narrator leans in, as if telling a secret to the viewer, and here lies the humiliation. The warning that was supposed to silence instead exposed the imbalance of power. Because for every threat, there was an echo of Africa refusing to bend. The footage shifts. Analysts on Western news channels call Traore reckless, dangerous, too young. But cut to the streets of Bamako, Ouagadougou, Niamey, his words ignite cheers, songs, celebrations. Young Africans see not recklessness, but courage. They see a leader willing to say what others only whisper. Our sovereignty is not up for debate. The drums rise again. This is the heart of the David versus Goliath story. The narrator proclaims, not that David had more weapons, or more allies, or more experience, but that David had resolve. David had the courage to stand when every voice said kneel. And in that moment, the giant's strength became his weakness. The camera pans across history. The Berlin Conference of 1884, where Africa was carved like a feast for empires. Then to images of independence struggles, men and women waving flags, celebrating freedom. And now, to the present day, a new generation, unchained, demanding not just independence on paper, but independence in practice. Sovereignty, the narrator stresses, is not a word. It is a shield hammered in fire, tested in blood, and Africa is polishing that shield again. The scene shifts to Israel, where Netanyahu's allies praise his toughness. But online, the clip of Traore's response is spreading, gathering millions of views. Western viewers watch with curiosity, some with skepticism, but many are forced to admit something is happening. Africa is no longer silent. Africa is no longer passive. The narrator's voice sharpens. The humiliation belongs not to Africa, but to those who believed warnings would still work in the 21st century. For the young see through the threats. They understand the game of global politics, and they are no longer afraid. Slow montage. African entrepreneurs building tech hubs in Lagos, students in Nairobi debating global politics, soldiers in Bamako marching with discipline. Africa's future is not written in warnings, but in ambition. The narrator declares, "This is the shocking response the world did not expect. Not a missile, not a declaration of war, but a declaration of pride, of sovereignty, of Africa's right to exist unshackled." Silence. Then, a single voice Traore's echoes again. "We will not be intimidated." The music returns now triumphant. David versus Goliath, Africa versus humiliation, sovereignty versus submission. This clash is not finished, it has only begun. And as history has shown, giants may roar, but it is often the defiant who write the future. The screen fades one final time to black. The narrator whispers, "Netanyahu gave a final warning, but the world remembers the answer. Africa has risen, and it will not kneel again." The music booms like thunder. The video ends. If this story gripped you, don't just watch, become part of the movement. Smash that like button so this message spreads further. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Africa's defiance marks the beginning of a new world order? And if you're ready to stand with sovereignty, with pride, with Africa rising, hit subscribe right now, because the clash is not over and you won't want to miss the next chapter.